Great talent wins games. Great stories win hearts. A boy marked by fire grows into a Premier League champion and the most divisive name in Manchester. Worshipped at Old Trafford, welcomed by a billboard across town, and condemned in Munich in a single, breathless arc. How does one man become hero and traitor, often to the very same city? How can a single player be the savior of West Ham United, a Champions League winner with Manchester United, and the lightning rod that split Manchester down the middle, all before he turned 30? This is the paradox of Carlos Tevez, a relentless street fighter forged in Fuerte Apache, an elite forward whose work rate thrilled Premier League crowds, and a combustible personality who courted as many headlines as he did trophies. At West Ham, Tevez became a cult hero, the scrapper whose goals and ferocity helped keep the Hammers in the Premier League. At Manchester United, he fit the badge's hard-running ethos, harrying defenders, winning titles, and basking under Old Trafford's floodlights. Then came the shock that rewrote the city's football map, crossing the divide to Manchester City, fronting a "Welcome to Manchester" billboard that turned a transfer into a cultural earthquake. And when his career demanded discipline the most, controversy followed, nowhere louder than that infamous night in Munich. Tevez's story is not a tidy rise and rise. It's a duel between devotion and defiance, team and self, myth and man. The same qualities that made him indispensable, hunger, edge, stubborn pride, also pushed him to the edge of scandal. Was he the tireless talisman every manager craves, or the uncontrollable maverick every dressing room fears? To understand the Premier League's most combustible champion, we must go back to the flames that forged him. This film argues that Carlos Tevez is the Premier League's purest study in duality, a working-class warrior whose loyalty to his roots clashed with the power politics of modern football. The stakes are personal and seismic. For Tevez, every sprint, goal, and standoff was a fight for identity and respect. For Manchester and the Premier League, the Tevez saga escalated a rivalry, redrew power, and left a blueprint for how ambition, money, and myth collide. By the end, you'll decide whether he was a necessary rebel or a champion who paid the price for refusing to bow. Carlos Alberto Tevez was born in February 1984 in Ciudadela, but his true story begins in Fuerte Apache, a notorious barrio outside Buenos Aires, Argentina. Fuerte Apache was more than a neighborhood, it was a battlefield. Poverty, crime, and violence were part of everyday life, and for a child to dream of football glory there was to dream against the odds. Tevez's childhood was marked not only by hardship, but by tragedy. His biological father abandoned the family before he was born, and he was raised by his mother and adoptive father in a household that struggled to survive. The most defining mark of his youth was physical as well as symbolic. At the age of just 10 months, Tevez suffered third-degree burns from a boiling water accident. The scars ran from his ear, down his neck and chest, a permanent reminder of fragility and resilience. Doctors urged plastic surgery, but Tevez refused. "These scars are who I am," he would later say. They became the badge of the fighter he always carried within. In this unforgiving environment, football was his refuge. Tevez grew up playing barefoot in the rough alleys, dodging both defenders and the dangers of the neighborhood. His energy, aggression, and refusal to back down even against older, stronger boys marked him out early. Unlike the polished prodigies of Buenos Aires' wealthier quarters, Tevez played with a rawness that mirrored his environment. Scrappy, fearless, relentless. That street-born edge would become his trademark. Despite the chaos around him, there was a sense of destiny. Coaches noticed a boy who would chase every ball as if his life depended on it, who played with a ferocity that belied his small frame. What separated Tevez from countless other talented boys of Fuerte Apache was not just skill, but character. He had already learned that survival required fight, and fight became the language of his football.
From those battered streets, a young Tevez would soon take his first steps into organized football, where the raw street fighter began to forge a professional path.
Tevez's first step beyond the concrete pitches of Forte Apache came when he joined the youth system of All Boys, a modest Buenos Aires club. Even among peers, he stood out, the smallest in stature, yet the most relentless in pressure. Scouts quickly noticed the intensity of his play. He pressed, harried, and fought as though each game were life or death. That intensity soon earned him a transfer to one of Argentina's giants, Boca Juniors. At Boca, Tevez's rawness was polished without losing its edge. He debuted for the senior team in 2001, still a teenager, yet he looked unfazed by the cauldron of La Bombonera. Fans fell in love with his work ethic as much as his talent. He wasn't the elegant dribbler in the mold of Riquelme. He was something different, a street fighter in blue and gold. His rise coincided with a golden era for Boca. In 2003, Tevez helped deliver the Copa Libertadores, scoring decisive goals and earning continental recognition. By 2004, he was named South American Footballer of the Year, a signal that Argentina had produced another global star. But even in triumph, controversy followed. His fiery temper often led to clashes with opponents and referees. He was not just Boca's young idol, he was also its enfant terrible, suspended multiple times for reckless tackles or dissent. That blend of brilliance and volatility would shadow him throughout his career. After conquering South America, Tevez took an unusual step. Instead of heading straight to Europe's elite, he moved in 2005 to Corinthians in Brazil under a shadowy transfer deal involving the investment group Media Sports Investments, MSI. The move was unprecedented, an Argentine star joining a Brazilian powerhouse, crossing a rivalry as bitter as any in world football. Once again, Tevez thrived on controversy. Fans were skeptical, but his goal soon silenced doubts. He captained Corinthians to a league title in 2005, becoming a hero in Sao Paulo and even learning Portuguese to connect with the supporters. It was in Brazil that European scouts became convinced Tevez was ready. His game had evolved. He could drop deep, link play, and still deliver goals. More importantly, he carried an aura of inevitability. Wherever he went, teams won. Yet the manner of his ownership, tied to third-party contracts through MSI, meant that when Europe finally came calling, the stage was set for one of the most controversial arrivals in Premier League.
When Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano arrived at West Ham United on deadline day in August 2006, the football world stood still. Two of Argentina's brightest stars, courted by Europe's elite, had landed not at Real Madrid, Chelsea, or Inter, but at a mid-table Premier League club fighting to survive. The deal, brokered by Kia Jurabchakian's MSI Group, raised eyebrows immediately. This was English football's first visceral taste of third-party ownership, and Tevez was its poster child. On the pitch, his adaptation was rocky. Alan Pardew struggled to fit Tevez into the team, and for months he remained an unused weapon, his aggressive pressing style clashing with West Ham's setup. Critics began to mutter, was this a misstep? A South American star unsuited to English football? The doubters had their answer in the spring of 2007. With West Ham drowning near the relegation zone, Tevez found his fire. He scored against Chelsea at Upton Park, celebrated with his shirt stripped and fists clenched, and from then on carried the hammers on his back. His most iconic moment came on the final day of the season at Old Trafford, ironically against Manchester United, when his lone goal secured West Ham's Premier League survival. For Hammers fans, Tevez was immortalized as the unlikely savior. Yet his heroics carried a dark shadow. The Premier League later ruled that West Ham had breached rules by failing to disclose third-party influence over Tevez's contract. Sheffield United, relegated as West Ham survived, sued for damages in a case that dragged on for years. The Tevez affair became a landmark in English football governance, rewriting the rules on ownership. Once again, Tevez was both hero and lightning rod. That summer, the Argentine street fighter ascended to the grandest stage, Manchester United. Sir Alex Ferguson had admired his tenacity, seeing in Tevez a perfect complement to Wayne Rooney and Cristiano Ronaldo. At Old Trafford, Tevez delivered. In the 2007-2008 season, he scored 19 goals across competitions, embodying the ferocity of Ferguson's attacking trident. His work rate thrilled the Stretford end. His goals, many scrappy, some spectacular, pushed United toward glory. The ultimate prize came in Moscow in May 2008, the Champions League final against Chelsea. Tevez started, harassed defenders all night, and converted his penalty in the shootout. When United lifted the trophy, Tevez was at the heart of Europe's best team. But even at this height, tension brewed. Tevez was beloved by fans, but unsettled by his contractual situation, still tied to MSI rather than United directly. He wanted assurances of permanence, yet the club hesitated. The cracks deepened the following season as Dimitar Berbatov's arrival reduced his minutes. To the supporters, chants of "Fergie, sign him up!" echoed weekly, but inside, Tevez felt undervalued. His story in Manchester was about to twist once more, into betrayal, billboards, and blue shirts. From adored hero in red, Tevez would cross the city divide in an act that shook English football to its core.
The summer of 2009 marked one of the most seismic moments in Premier League history. Carlos Tevez, once adored by the red half of Manchester, crossed the divide to join Manchester City. It was not just a transfer, it was a declaration of war. City unveiled him with a now infamous billboard in the city center. "Welcome to Manchester." The message was unmistakable. Tevez wasn't just changing clubs, he was a weapon in City's rise and United's torment. The betrayal stung Old Trafford. Sir Alex Ferguson accused Tevez of lacking loyalty, while United fans branded him a mercenary. Yet for City supporters, he was the embodiment of their new ambition. In one stroke, Tevez became both villain and savior, traitor and talisman. This was the duality that defined his career, revered and reviled, sometimes in the same city block. On the pitch, Tevez justified every penny. His first season at City, he scored 29 goals in all competitions, terrorizing defenders with his tireless pressing and instinctive finishing. Unlike many superstars, he relished the dirty work, tracking back, snapping into tackles, pressing goalkeepers. He played as if still on the streets of Fuerte Apache, but now on the richest stage in English football. That season, he was voted Manchester City's Player of the Year, adored by a fan base desperate for icons. By 2010, Tevez was captain. The armband seemed both fitting and ironic. Here was a man who played with warrior spirit, leading by example on the pitch, yet remained combustible off it. Still, his leadership bore fruit. In 2011, Tevez scored 24 Premier League goals, sharing the Golden Boot with Dimitar Berbatov. More importantly, he fired City to their first major trophy in 35 years, the FA Cup. His semi-final masterclass against United at Wembley, capped with a 1-0 victory, was both symbolic and historic. City had beaten their neighbors en route to ending their trophy drought. For the blue half of Manchester, Tevez was already immortal. Yet, in typical Tevez fashion, triumph came hand in hand with turbulence. The most notorious episode arrived in September 2011 in a Champions League tie against Bayern Munich. Tevez was left on the bench by Roberto Mancini. When asked to warm up, he appeared to refuse. Cameras caught the tension. Mancini exploded in fury, and the story spread like wildfire. Tevez refuses to play. Overnight, he became the Premier League's ultimate renegade. City suspended him, pundits condemned him, and Mancini declared he would never play for the club again. For months, Tevez vanished from English football. Instead of fighting for his place, he returned to Argentina, pictured on golf courses while City chased their first league title in decades. The contrast was stark. His teammates battling on the pitch, their captain living leisurely thousands of miles away. It was a scandal that seemed to tarnish his City legacy irreparably. But the Tevez story was never straightforward. In March 2012, as City faltered in the title race, he returned. Many thought the bridges had burned, yet his comeback proved decisive.
He scored and assisted in key games down the stretch, helping City claw back ground on United. When Sergio Aguero scored that goal on the final day against QPR to seal the 2011-2012 title, Tevez was on the pitch, celebrating in sky blue. He had gone from exile to champion in the space of months, embodying both the chaos and triumph of City's rise. Tevez's City years distilled the paradox of his career. Statistically, they were his peak: 73 goals in 148 appearances, countless lung-bursting runs, and the armband during one of the most transformative periods in the club's history. He gave City an edge, a snarling competitiveness that matched their new financial muscle. And yet, he also nearly derailed it all with his rebellion. For every iconic celebration, there was a controversy. For every goal, a headline of discontent. Fans remained divided in how to remember him. To City supporters, he was the street fighter who brought silverware and swagger, a vital bridge from the club's barren years to its modern dominance. To United fans, he was the Judas who crossed the line. To neutrals, he was pure drama, an explosive talent who played the game with raw intensity, but never far from combustion. The question hung heavy. Could Tevez sustain greatness without chaos? Or was the chaos the very reason he was great? The answer would come in the next chapter of his career, where personal choices, disputes, and a restless spirit would once again reshape his path.
For all his brilliance, the Bayern Munich scandal in 2011 remained a scar that never fully healed. Even after his return to City and his role in the 2011-12 title run, Carlos Tevez's relationship with the club and with English football at large was fractured. He had gone from captain to outcast to champion in a single season. That volatility defined him, but it also convinced many that his future in the Premier League was limited. The fallout with Roberto Mancini never truly disappeared. The manager saw Tevez as both indispensable and intolerable, a warrior on the pitch, a rebel off it. While teammates like Sergio Aguero were cementing their status as City legends, Tevez remained unpredictable. He scored crucial goals in the 2012-13 season, including a winner in the Manchester Derby, but the sense of inevitability grew. His time in England was running out. For the Premier League, Tevez had become both spectacle and warning. He showed the transformative power of South American fire, but also the dangers of ego colliding with club politics. By the summer of 2013, the inevitable came. Tevez left Manchester City for Juventus in a cut-price deal. It was the closing of one chapter, but not the end of the story. In Italy, Tevez rediscovered a balance that often eluded him in England. At Juventus, he wore the iconic number 10 shirt, once donned by legends like Platini, Del Piero, and Baggio. Instead of scandal, there was a sense of responsibility. He thrived under Antonio Conte and later Massimiliano Allegri, spearheading a Juventus side that dominated Serie A. In his 2 seasons, Tevez scored 50 goals in 96 appearances, winning back-to-back league titles and helping the club reach the 2015 Champions League final. The irony was stark. In Manchester, he was cast as the uncontrollable maverick. In turn, he became the leader, praised for his discipline and professionalism. Yet the duality remained. Tevez himself admitted he was happiest when close to home, among family, speaking his own language. Italy offered stability, but Argentina remained in his heart. In 2015, at just 31 and still at the peak of his powers, he made the surprising choice to return to Boca Juniors. This decision symbolized the eternal tension in Tevez's career. He could have stayed in Europe, continued to chase Champions League glory, and polish his legacy among the greats. Instead, he chose identity over ambition, family over fame. For some, it was admirable, a rejection of football's ruthless machine. For others, it was wasteful, an elite player walking away too soon. His later years reflected the same pattern, a high-profile but short-lived move to Shanghai Shenhua in China,
where money replaced meaning, followed by further returns to Boca. Each shift carried both admiration and criticism. Tevez was never predictable, never easy to categorize. Was he a mercenary chasing contracts, or a loyal son returning home? Was he running from pressure, or simply living on his own terms? The contradictions that began in Fuerte Apache had followed him across continents. His Premier League story ended in glory and controversy, but the aftershocks rippled through the rest of his career. He remained a man caught between two poles, the street fighter who rose to global fame and the restless rebel who could never be contained. And so when we reflect on Tevez's legacy, the question is not only what he achieved, but how we should remember him, as a champion, a rebel, or both.
Carlos Tevez's legacy in the Premier League is as complex as the man himself. He was never the poster boy of elegance like Thierry Henry, nor the consistent talisman like Wayne Rooney. Instead, he was the contradiction that football could not ignore. At West Ham, he was a savior. At Manchester United, he was a champion. At Manchester City, he was both the hero who lifted the club into a new era and the rebel who nearly tore it apart. Few players have left such deep marks on two rival clubs and provoked such strong feelings on both sides. His statistics speak loudly. Over 80 Premier League goals, multiple league titles, a Champions League medal. But numbers alone do not capture Tevez. He symbolized something rawer, the working-class warrior who fought for every ball, who brought the spirit of Fuerte Apache into the world's richest league. He was adored for his tenacity, feared for his unpredictability, and unforgettable because he was never just one thing. Even in retirement, debate lingers. Was he a mercenary, moving where the money and respect flowed? Or was he a man true to himself, choosing family and identity over the polished path of superstardom? Perhaps he was both. That is the essence of Carlos Tevez. Hero and villain, champion and rebel, scarred survivor and global icon. And in the end, that duality is his true gift to football. But before we close, let's bring it back to the heart of the series.
Great talent wins games. Great stories win hearts. Carlos Tevez's journey was never simple, marked by fire, forged in chaos, and forever defined by duality. A man who could save you and betray you, sometimes in the same season. That's why his story still divides the Premier League today. If you've enjoyed uncovering the untold story of Tevez, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us bring you more of football's most dramatic journeys. And stay tuned, because next time, we'll dive into another Premier League icon whose rise and fall shocked the football world.